Hello, my friends. And today, based on the situation, so it's reported that Russia is only preparing for a large-scale offensive, and the significant activation along the front line and in the Kharkiv region today is just a preparation for the deployment of a large number of troops. And foreign analysts describe the situation as follows. A large Russian offensive could occur in the coming weeks. Ukraine is preparing, Reuters writes. Currently, the Russian Federation is building up small units near the border with Sumy, and the enemy's offensive in the Kharkiv region is an attempt to draw reserves into battle before Russia's major summer offensive. Ukrainian command has informed NATO about the serious situation on the battlefield caused by delays in the supply of weapons. And the Ukrainian Armed Forces are also confirmed that the Russians haven't introduced their main reserves into battle, and no one knows how many reserves they still have on Russian territory that they can quickly deploy. Therefore, as mentioned earlier, the summer will be hot. Meanwhile, active fighting continues in the Kharkiv direction. So, in the past day, the Russians conducted 10 assaults, and occupiers are actively trying to break through to the settlement of Liptsi. But the Ukrainian forces are doing everything possible to stop the advance of the Russians, and the front line hasn't changed in the past day, despite the fact that the gray zone is already quite large. So occupiers are trying to break through both to the outskirts of the settlement and through the fields. And already yesterday late in the evening, the occupiers began to claim that they had secured positions on the outskirts of the city. So if the occupiers manage to consolidate, the shelling of Kharkiv will intensify even more. Also, a large number of attacks, as previously observed, are occurring in the Vovchansk area. So the occupiers are attempting to capture the city, approaching its outskirts. But the Ukrainian forces are pushing them back. And these battles have been ongoing for 3 days now. So meanwhile, the occupiers continue to carry out airstrikes on the city, causing maximum damage. And attacks in the village of Staritsa also persist, and overall the situation along the front line remains tense. But as of today, everything remains unchanged, and as we already know, they haven't thrown their main reserves into battle, so it's difficult to say how the situation will develop further. So in addition, the advisor to the head of the president's office stated that defensive lines exist in the Kharkiv direction, and everything previously mentioned about their absence is Russian propaganda. So friends, it's difficult to say anything here, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. But this situation with defensive lines was also commented on by foreign analysts. So due to the prohibition on advancing to shell Russian territory, Ukraine was unable to establish a defensive line near the border with Russia. As noted by the American Institute for the Study of War, Russian forces, which began to advance 8 kilometers into the northern part of the Kharkiv region, in those areas where Ukrainian forces deliberately didn't establish significant defensive lines. Experts also believe that Russian shelling across the border made it impossible to build fortifications with 5 kilometers, and this was caused the initial success of the Russian offensive. And restrictions on the use of Western weapons to attack Russian territory make fixed defensive positions near the border vulnerable and unprotected. So overall, the lack of defensive lines directly on the border is the fault of the partners who don't allow strikes against Russia. So moving to the front lines. In the direction of Kupiansk, battles for Sinkivka continue. And throughout the winter, the Russians fought for this village, trying to take it under their control, but as it seems summer is approaching and the front line here remains unchanged. So battles also continue near the village of Ivanivka. But there have been no new successes for the Russians here and the line of engagement remains unchanged. In the area of Svatove, in Berestove, as well as in Myasozharivka, so fighting continues. However, elsewhere, the situation has somewhat stabilized and the number of attacks has decreased. Therefore, the front line remains unchanged over the day. In the direction of Crimea, so the occupiers continue to attack the villages of Terny and Nevsky, but they haven't achieved any successes as before, and the front line remains unchanged. So in the rest of the settlements, only shelling is recorded. In the Siversk direction, so the occupiers are attempting to break through to Zvanivka, and there are battles near Rozdolivka. So it's evident that they're trying to advance in new directions across the fields to bypass their populated areas and emerge where they are not expected. However, the Ukrainian Armed Forces are striving to repel all attacks and the front line hasn't changed over the day. In the Chasiv Yar direction, so battles are ongoing for Klishivka and Andriivka. So the occupiers are trying to destroy Chasiv Yar also, but it's clear they have had no advancements here for a long time. So the situation has been stabilized by the Ukrainian Armed Forces in this direction. But of course, in the near future, they may deploy more reserves here for assaults and achieve new successes, but for today the situation remains unchanged. In the Pokrovsk direction, so the number of attacks per day has increased to 35, and once again they are attempting to break through here at any cost. So the main battles are recorded near Novo-Alexandrivka, so to break through to the highway. And attacks also continue on Yevhenivka, Sokil, Novopokrovske, Umanske, Yasnobrodivka, and of course Netailova. And moreover, yesterday the occupiers claimed full control over the village. So if confirmed, they will now move towards Karlivka. And today the distance from the front line to the city is just 3 kilometers and 200 meters. In the Kurakhova direction, so battles continue for Krasnohorivka and attacks on the outskirts of Kostantinivka persist. So there have been over 10 assaults in the past day, but the front line remains unchanged. In the direction of Vuhledar, so the occupiers continue their attempts to advance in the area of Vuhledar, and of course storm Staromayorske and Urozhaine. So despite such high activity practically on every front, so it's evident that the Russians can't advance everywhere. So for example, near Staromayorske and Urozhaine, assaults have been ongoing for over a month without any changes to the front line. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the situation has stabilized and no new attacks are reported here. So all claims by the Russians about capturing Robotyne are not confirmed, so the situation remains unchanged. In the direction of Kherson, so the shelling of Kherson continue, but no new assaults on the village of Korinka have been recorded. Therefore, the situation here can also be described as stable. But meanwhile, in Ukraine, besides mobilization, the issue of transportation is being considered and new details have emerged. So all vehicles, including passenger cars, must be registered with the military. This applies to businesses. According to the draft resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers starting from May 18th, Legal entities will be prohibited from moving certain vehicles not only abroad but also beyond the boundaries of the region of registration, except for adjacent regions. So the decision hasn't yet been made, but it could lead to the shutdown of many businesses in the country. So, judging from numerous statements, starting from the 18th, the entire Ukraine will come to a standstill. So, what do you think about this? Please share your thoughts in the comments. But overall, the situation stands. And perhaps that's all from me. So, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.